Hello, and welcome to another episode of Glorious Life on Wheels. I originally had another video that I planned to air today. I was going to share with you about my disastrous road trip in my van that had to be cut short due to some really poor decisions and poor planning on my part. But I'll share that with you later. As the title for this video suggests, I want to talk about the purge that's taking place. And yes, it is a purge of both homeless individuals and van life folks and people living in vehicles from cities in this country. It has progressively been going on for a while now, with cities putting up signs prohibiting overnight parking, prohibiting parking between the hours of, say, 10 and 5 when people typically sleep, then gradually increasing to no oversized vehicles being allowed, and even having limits to being able to park for only 2 hours in places. But things really took a kickstart on this when the decision in the Supreme Court, the Grants Pass versus Johnson decision, was decided. And that's when cities just went gung-ho on kicking out homeless people and van dwellers. Come on and join me. And I'm going to give you a little bit of history on the groundbreaking decision, Grants Pass versus Johnson, and what it meant, and then latest developments and where I think all of this is heading. So come on, let's chat, shall we? For a long time, in a lot of cities across the country, there kind of was a policy, or at least a practice, of allowing, or at least kind of looking the other way, to homeless encampments for the most part, if there were no beds available in shelters to house the homeless individuals who were setting up camp. Well, Grants Pass, a city in Oregon, passed an ordinance that basically outlawed camping and setting up tents on public property, including a particular park there. Well, this matter eventually ended up in the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit went along with allowing the encampments and tents if there were no beds in shelters. So Grants Pass, or the city of Grants Pass officials, took the case to the Supreme Court. Now, my understanding is the Ninth Circuit looked at the idea that it violated the Eighth Amendment to not allow the camping. Eighth Amendment being cruel and unusual punishment. My understanding, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is that it was felt that it was cruel and unusual punishment to basically criminalize homelessness or not allow people to camp if they had nowhere else to live. Well, the Supreme Court overruled that ruling of the Ninth Circuit and said basically, it's not cruel and unusual punishment, and that cities, Grants Pass in particular, could eject people from public property even if there were no shelter beds available. In the dissenting response, or the opposition to the decision, it was a 6-3 decision, if I'm not mistaken. The judges that opposed the decision stated basically, to sum it up in my words, that the court's decision was essentially criminalizing and punishing people for being homeless, and I guess you could also say for being poor, because they had nowhere else to go. So they were being punished, and their camping in public or in the open when they had no other place to go essentially made them criminals, because the cities now could either enforce or enact ordinances or laws that made it illegal to camp outside. And my point here is that same decision has also made it essentially illegal for people in vans to camp on public streets, because it's the same mindset that prevents homeless people from camping out when they have no other place, that prevents people who live in their vans from parking on streets, public streets and sleeping in their vehicles when they have nowhere else to park. Since that court decision from the Supreme Court, there have been additional actions aimed at homeless people, which by extension includes van dwellers, because many people, in fact most people, consider those living in their vehicles as not just houseless but homeless. And one of those actions was the executive order that the president signed about homelessness, and I'll leave a link to a video I did on that order explaining it more. I'll leave a link to that in the comment section on this video. Also, another action that recently happened was the president's statement about all homeless people need to leave or vacate Washington, D.C. immediately. In a statement on social media, the president essentially said something to the effect of, "The homeless have to move out immediately," referring to Washington, D.C. "We will give you places to stay, but far away from the Capitol." In other comments, he expressed a desire to make Washington, D.C. more beautiful and safer, and that is why homeless people had to vacate Washington, D.C. immediately or be evicted. And he took over or made statements about taking over the police force in D.C. and also enacted other measures, including bringing in the National Guard and other agencies to help identify and essentially rid Washington, D.C. of homeless people. Now, here's one of the problems that I have with that, and that is many of those people may have access to social programs in that area. They may have established case managers or social workers or have places that they go for resources and help. So they're going to be, as he said, sent away or evicted and forced to go, according to him, far away from Washington, D.C. Not just right outside, but far away. I don't know how far that means, but that just seems inhumane. But the thing that also is concerning is that it was noted that there are several other cities, and the inference was made that there were going to be actions to do similar things in other cities. Now, this is not about Republican, Democrat. I don't care who is basically waging these actions against homeless and ultimately van life folks, because anyone who doesn't think this is going to affect van life folks really has their head in the sand. And that's a concern to me, and one of the reasons I'm making this video, because people who are in van life either living in cities or just being nomads and driving through cities, but often having to stop maybe in cities and park overnight to sleep, are going to have to make some major adjustments. On my recent ill-fated travels, I stopped at a Love's in Nevada. And this was the first time I had ever seen this kind of restriction at a truck stop in an area where there were a number of vans parked there and people clearly sleeping in their vehicles. But there was a huge sign there, and I had never seen a sign like that at a truck stop. It said 2-hour parking limit. I'd never seen a 2-hour parking limit at a truck stop for vans or vehicles. And underneath the 2-hour parking limit, it said this limit will be strictly enforced. And it also said vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. So I thought, maybe this is just one place, one owner. So I went to another truck stop and I went inside. It didn't have any signs posted. So I went inside and I got to chatting with the woman that was working there. And I asked her, I said, so if I wanted to park here overnight or just maybe 4 or 5 hours to get some sleep and get back on the road, would that be okay? Because I just filled up my tank with gas. And she said, I'll let you stay there a few hours. She said, but really, I'm not supposed to. I'll let you stay here a few hours, but you can't stay any longer than that. So places, not only Walmarts, but other places, truck stops that have traditionally allowed people to stay overnight are now cracking down and changing their rules. So this is going to be major, major changes. And this was in Nevada. I believe it was in or inside or right out of Las Vegas. So things are changing and they're changing rapidly. I've been thinking about doing a video outlining some of what I think the necessary adjustments and changes will need to be for nomads and van life folks and others living in vehicles. If you want me to do a video like that, let me know in the comments that you would like that, and I will work on a video outlining what I think the necessary changes are going to be in order to survive living in a van or a vehicle. I'm here in the desert and I'm here to do some interviews for a place that I have been really curious about. It's a tiny home community, and I'll be bringing you some videos from that soon. While I was here, my family came to visit. So if you want me to do a tour of where we're staying and show you some of the amenities here, because it's pretty nice, let me know that. And I'll give you a tour around this facility in the desert where we're staying while I'm going to be doing some interviews. All right, things are changing every single day, and it's going to get tougher for van life folks, but there are ways to work around it. And I will share some of those ways if you want me to in upcoming videos. Meanwhile, I love each and every one of you, and I hope your journeys are filled with joy and blessings in abundance. And be careful out there. I'll see you down the road.